In the Psalms, the 9th chapter, the first and second verses, it reads, I will praise thee, O Lord, with my whole heart. I will show forth all thy marvelous works. I will be glad and rejoice in thee. I will sing praise to thy name, O thou most high God. I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes on the subject, the attributes of a grateful heart. The attributes of a grateful heart. Now, a few years ago, when I was writing or developing my character program that's used in schools all across the country, based upon the 25 cherished values of the American people, I was listing and explaining the values. And one of the values that Americans have always cherished and loved and appreciated, admired and honored is the value of gratitude. But it was when I was writing up the explanation of all these values, it occurred to me that gratitude is very difficult to measure. That it is very difficult to test gratitude. In our schools, we like to test things. We over-test. And we have instruments of measurement that we say test kids' ability to understand the language, to understand math, to understand science, to understand biology, to understand history and social studies. But there is no test that we can measure in an instant people's degree or depth of gratitude. So if a person says, I'm grateful, you have to take the person at his or her word, because you have no test that you could take them into the back room and say, okay, take this test, and that will tell me whether you are grateful or not. However, there are some attributes that grateful people have, that if you know those attributes and watch them long enough, you will be able to tell whether they are grateful or not. And if you know what the attributes are and look at your own life, after a while you'll be able to tell whether you are grateful or displaying the attributes of a grateful heart. Now, how is it that I know these things and other people don't know them as well? Well, one question would be, I'm just smarter than they are. But one answer would be, but that's really not a good answer, because that's not necessarily true. But one of the reasons is that I have been observant, and I was blessed to grow up around a certain type of people. I was blessed to grow up around grateful people. Now, I hear people boast about their upbringing and the environment in which they were reared. I've heard people boast about the fact they were brought up around money, wealthy people, and I think that that's good. I've heard people boast about the fact that they were reared around educated people, and I think that that is good, because the more the people know around whom you are reared, the more that will be passed on to you almost automatically. But I don't boast about coming from wealth or from great education, even though I might have come from a background of educated people. That's not one of the things that I boast about. I am proud of the fact that I grew up around good, decent people. Now, many of them were well educated. And I didn't realize how good and decent they were until I was grown. But I am very, very happy and blessed today and thankful to God that I grew up around some of the best people in the country. And I don't think that the people that I grew up around were so unique. I think that at that time, that group of black people that I grew up around were beautiful, wonderful people. And I keep saying that I think it's a shame today that the black children and the children in America generally do not know how decent black people were 40 or 50 years ago. And I think that one of the problems that black children are having today, young black folk are having today, is that they are reaping what they have sown. They rejected some of the most beautiful people in the history of the country and went out and did their own thing. And now they are paying a great penalty for rejecting their good, decent parents and going their own way in the world. Now that's another sermon, but I didn't want to get into all that, but it just flows, okay, when I get going. So I grew up around these good, decent people, and they were grateful people, and having observed them all of my life, I have learned the attributes of a grateful heart. I have learned what grateful people look like, what grateful people act like, what it feels like to be in the company of grateful people. I have learned what are the attributes of a grateful heart. Now notice that in this psalm, the psalmist says, I will praise thee, O Lord, with my whole heart. I will show forth all thy marvelous works. I will be glad and rejoice in thee. In other words, I will pour out my heart in a way that few others do. I will express some things from my heart that only are expressed by people who have a certain attitude. Only expressed by people who are grateful. So I look at this and I think about what are the attributes. Now we're at Thanksgiving time. And people are talking about thankfulness. We are singing about thankfulness. We are holding special services about thankfulness. But is all of that guaranteeing that these people are really, really as thankful as they ought to be? What are the attributes of true gratitude? Well, I find that one of the first attributes of thankfulness, people with thankful hearts, one of the first attributes is proclaiming the things that they're thankful about. People who are grateful are always talking about the things that they are grateful about. Now, this is not putting gratefulness on your license plate and having, I got this one friend, his answering machine. I got to hear a sermon every time I call him. He just pretty much have all this stuff on his answering machine. And I said, now look, if I want to hear a sermon, I'll go to church. I won't call you. But he has it on his answering machine. And that's all right. Some have it on their cars, on their t-shirts and whatever. They have all these things proclaiming their gratefulness to God. But you see, gratitude is in the heart and is not on the answer machine message. But you can proclaim it there. And that's okay. And people do proclaim their gratefulness to God, and they proclaim their gratefulness to the people that God have used to help them. And stop saying, I hear people, well, I'm not thinking for the people. I look beyond the people and I'm thankful to God. Well, it's nice to be thankful for God, but if God uses somebody else to bless you, you ought to be thankful to that person also. It's not enough just to be thankful to God. God doesn't want to just use people to help you, and you are so insensitive about the part that they played in your deliverance, your help, that you don't even mention anything to them. Be thankful to them also. And you can tell a grateful heart, because a grateful heart looks for opportunity to tell anybody what someone has done for them that they are grateful for. I have people who just almost embarrass me by telling folks of simple stuff that I did for them that they think so highly of. There was this lady in St. Louis, in the church that I used to work with. She and her husband are elderly people now, and several years ago, about 20 years ago, her husband was in the hospital, so I called her to see how he was doing, because I was getting ready to go to the hospital to visit him to make sure he was still there. Well, she said, "Oh, Reverend Jenkins said, he's getting out today, and I don't have any way." She doesn't drive. Said, "I don't have any way to go and get him." I said, "Well, that's no problem. I'll go and get him." She said, "You would do that?" I said, yes. I'll just go and get him and bring him home. And I went and got her and took him home. 20 years have passed. And every chance that woman gets to tell anybody about that, she tells him how grateful she was and is for the fact that I went and got Fred, her husband, that day and brought him home. She has cooked me so many meals, and I sit there and listen, and she tells this over and over. Grateful. And there's this other lady. One day, her husband left home and went down south to a family reunion and was going to be gone about 3 days. Well, the afternoon after the husband left, she discovered that the freezer that they had in the garage had gone out. And she panicked. She had all that food in there. He was going to be gone till that Monday. It was Friday, maybe even Monday evening. I think it was the holiday. And she panicked. She didn't know what to do. I don't remember whether I called her or she called me, and she told me. Oh, she said that the freezer's gone out, and the husband's a minister, and said he's gone, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I said, "Where did you get it?" She told me where she got it. I said, "Well, call him." I went over there and got my truck and went out to the place and got a freezer, replaced her freezer. She called and we set it up, and I went out and picked it up and brought it back and took it off the truck and set the freezer up. Now, that was at least 20 or 25 years ago. Oh, she tells people about it now. Now, I like for her to tell that story. Now, not because, but there's a reason I like for her to. Used to I get embarrassed. Oh, don't tell people that. But now, she tells them how I came back by myself. And she said, "Oh, he was so strong. He picked his freezer up and rolled it up by himself." Now, she doesn't mention that there are probably rollers on this freezer, but we leave that out. She give people a picture that I picked this freezer up by myself, like Samson, and carried it into the hall. But she tells people about that to this day. When you are grateful, it's hard to keep your mouth shut about the things that you are grateful for. That's why I brag so much about my students. I had a birthday, last week or so, and all the week my kids had celebrations. Now, people say, "Oh, you must have been a great teacher." I said, "Oh, no, I had great students. And I'm grateful." So a grateful heart is a proclaiming heart. In Mississippi and across the South, they used to have something called Covenant Sunday. We don't have it anymore. And the testimony, where they went to church. The preacher wasn't even there. They would go to church on Sunday, and they would just praise God and tell folk what good things God had done for them. That was their testimony. And some folk would get happy just talking about what God had done for them. Now, these were not rich people. Many of them walked to church, didn't even have cars. But they used every opportunity to tell folks what good things God had done for them. So a grateful heart, one of the attributes of a grateful heart is a proclaiming heart. Secondly, I found from watching these people that a grateful heart is a perpetuating heart. It is a passage-on heart. That is, that grateful people are almost always trying to pass on to others blessings. You see, when God blesses them, they become instruments of God's blessings into the lives of others. One of the great English writers says, those who bring happiness into the lives of others cannot keep it from themselves. And many people want to be happy. And they go out and say, well, I'm trying to be happy. One of the silliest things in the world is to go out personally trying to be happy. Those people who go out trying to be happy will never be happy. You say, well, why is that? The preamble to the Constitution says that pursuit of happiness. Well, those who pursue happiness will never find it. So why is it that you will not find happiness pursuing it? Well, first place, you don't know what it looks like. You would know it when you found it. You guys want to see happiness in the abstract thing. You would know it when you found it. It's kind of like money. Folks who pursue money will never find it. I'm going out to play rich. You will never have money looking for money. Because folks don't know what God's money looks like. Nor do they know what happiness looks like. So those who look for happiness will never find it. Now, why is that? Because happiness does not go with selfishness. And it is selfish to look for happiness. Especially in a world where so many people are suffering. What would I look like at my age with all these people got all these problems, struggling and stuff? So what are you doing with your 3 degrees and your ministerial calling and your fortune in the world? Oh, I'm looking for happiness. Wouldn't that be silly? Looking for, that's all you're doing. Now, the Lord has blessed you all these years. And what you plan to do in your retirement is to look for happiness. But you really would find happiness if you lose yourself and try to help others. Happiness will just come into your life in ways you never even imagined. So, people who are grateful people are always looking for ways that they can be a blessing to others. I just want to be a blessing to someone. I have noticed that, and the people that I know who are grateful people, they are looking for ways that they can spread that blessing of those blessings on. You know, if you do research, you'd find that many of the hospitals in this country, many of the great charitable organizations in this country, many of the foundations in this country that give back bountifully to people were started by folks who were helped by somebody. And the way they respond to that help, the way they show their gratitude is to go out and do for others things that people did to them or for them. And that is one of the attributes of a grateful heart. The third one I don't like to talk about because it's one of my things I was guilty of for a long time. Another attribute of a grateful heart is a grateful heart is a forgiving heart. Grateful people don't hold grudges. Now, you know, everybody who knows me know that I used to not forgive people. That was something, if I had gone to hell, if I died years ago and had gone to hell, that's what it would have been for, holding grudges. I was this lady, one who fixed my birthday dinner years ago, she knew of a particular group of people that I had terrible grudges against. One man in particular, and every time I go to her house, I'd mention his name. And she said, "You're going to go to hell." Holding a grudge against that man. But I would hold a grudge. And I held grudges. I was justified in holding grudges, I thought. Well, one of the reasons I thought I was justified in holding grudges is because it was kind of arrogant. As I look back on it now, since I'm changed, I can admit my sins. But I thought about it, it was kind of arrogant self-righteousness. Now here's why. And then when I say I held grudges against people, I didn't go and hate them or anything. I just decided never, as long as I live, to ever have any association with them again. That's what I always decided. Anybody that did anything to me, I don't care if they were family members. If they did anything to me, the way I dealt with them is, you will never, as long as I live, get a chance to do that again. One time they made me angry in my hometown, Mississippi, and I said, I'll never come back down there until I'm brought back down there in a box. And then I thought, well, you better shut up and not say that again, because you're going back in the box eventually. So you better try to not give God an idea that you want to hurry the process. Now here's why I got angry. Now you'll see why I get angry. And if anybody has this problem, you can change it. One of the reasons that I told you was self-righteousness. One of the reasons that I got angry with people was because I have made a point all of my life to treat everybody right. I have never knowingly mistreated anybody as an adult. Never. And whenever anybody said anything bad about me, it made me angry. Every church I've ever worked with, I was at home minding my business, and they called me and asked me to work with them, just like you did. Now, if next year, after I leave here, I hear, oh, he tried to beat us out of our money, or he tried to boss our church. In the past, I'd have been angry. I'd been over there looking for people. Who said that about me? Because all I've done was that what you asked me to do, to come here and preach, this is what I've done all my life. All of my life, I've helped folks with their children and their situation. Whatever's wrong, I try to help them. Now that you live like that, and then people go out and lie on you, you can see why I would get angry. So I would get angry. Then it finally occurred to me, the folks that you're angry with, God has so blessed you that you shouldn't even have time to be angry with anybody. That all the folks that you're bad with, you have more than all the rest of them put together. And for somebody with your education and your calling to be belittling yourself, being angry with anybody about anything, is beneath your education and is beneath your ministerial calling. And that's when I started letting all the stuff, they can say what they want to say. Jesus got my back. So, grateful people are forgiving people. They don't hold grudges. They are so glad that God has blessed them and forgiven them and lifted them that they don't have time to be worrying about the petty things that folks who are not about anything say about them. They just keep on going and know that God will take care of you. That's what grateful people do. Now, finally, there were other things that I'd say, but I'm not going to. Grateful people are worshipful people, and their gratitude is always rooted in the grace of God. Their gratitude is always rooted in the grace of God. Now, I would end with this little story. A minister friend of mine befriended a man. He was in prison when he befriended. He was a chaplain working at the prison, and he befriended this man and worked with him for years and helped the man get out of prison. The man professed a calling to Christ and then to the ministry, and he helped the man to get out of prison. And the man, claimed to be a called preacher. And one day or one weekend, he invited me to come down to the city where they were, Cape Girardeau, and preach a weekend for them, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, and Sunday afternoon. And I went, and the man was there, and he introduced him to me, and we had wonderful conversation. And then that Sunday I preached, and that Sunday afternoon I preached again. But before I preached, they had a testimonial service. And this man testified. Oh, he gave a great testimony, according to them. And then when I got ready to go, I told my friend, I said, now, John, I want you to be careful with your friend, the preacher. He said, he said, he's a good guy. Said, I worked with him years in the prison, and he's a wonderful guy. And I think that he's really somebody that you can trust. And he had two daughters and I said, well, you just be careful and don't trust him too much. He said, well, thank you. He said, but I think he's all right. I said, just remember, don't trust him too much. Well, time went on, and things happened, and finally one weekend I called him and I said, how's the minister doing? And he started crying. He said, Jenkins, he said, that man has disappointed me. He said, he's gone into the community, he lied, he has a terrible reputation. He said, he's disappointed me. He said, you warned me. And then he said to me, he said, but you know the thing that bothers me about this? He said, you know, and I have these friends who think I'm smart. He said, Jenkins, we know that you are brilliant. He said, but I'm no dummy myself. He said, I have college degrees. He's working on his doctorate. He said, I know you're smart. Yeah, but I was around this man for years. I was on the council when he was ordained to preach. I've been with him. You came down here for a weekend and saw something in him that I didn't see. He said, what did you see? I said, well, you saw it too. You just didn't know what you were looking at. He said, what did you see? I said, you remember when we went to the testimonial service? He said, yes. I said, well, your friend, he had been in jail for, it was murder actually, when he was a young person. I said, when your friend testified, he testified with a smile on his face. He testified as a man who had beaten the system. I said, I knew then he wasn't sincere. You see, when you really have been saved by grace, you know you haven't been beaten by the system. You know that the grace of God has saved you from the system. That's and you see, and I also know that ideas come in a certain sequence. Joy comes only after pain. That's why people cry through their tears. Because it's through the tears and the sadness, the experience of the sadness, that develop your appreciation for the salvation that you get through Christ. And I didn't see that in him. And I knew he wasn't sincere. I cannot talk about my sins and any bad thing that I have done without feeling bad first. And somewhere in the feeling bad, there's idea of the joy and the grace of God creeps in, and those tears start flowing because of that sadness, and then the joy comes when I realize that I was a wretch. I was a wretch. Were it not for the grace of God, I would have been that way. And that's when those tears stop flowing and the smile comes on my face. That's what happens when you are really, really grateful. You know that the greatest thing that you have to be grateful for if you are a child of God is the grace of Jesus. And all of your gratitude is rooted in that God saved you. When I was sinking deep in sin, love lifted me. And that is something to be thankful for. We extend it.